Well, we have been talking about gut health quite a bit, and we know that there is a connection, right, from gut to the brain. So there's a nerve that's kind of sending signals all the way. That's why, when you see, oh, I'm feeling a little dizzy or something's happening in my gut, my brain is acting the same way, right? That's what we are talking about. So hang on for 1 second, and Helena is going to join us. She is a naturopath and a gut health expert. So we will be talking about stomach acid. We'll be talking about food that's good for constipation. Hi, Helena. You figured it out. You are an Insta Pro now.
What was that? Sorry?
I said you are an Insta Pro, Instagram Pro. You figured it out how to join me.
It's pretty easy. I've done Facebook Live, but I've never done Instagram Live before. So, ta-da! You're my first.
All right. So, to all the viewers, Helena is a naturopath and she is a gut health expert, and she's going to share some of the gut health recipes. But hold on, we are going to introduce what exactly gut health means. But before that, maybe we can learn a little bit about you, Helena.
Yeah. So, gut health is something I'm extremely passionate about. I think I became a naturopath many years ago, and I went through my own journey with gut health, having contracted a parasite when I was in Fiji, and I got very, very unwell with it for a couple of years. And then I think just being intolerant to a few foods, I started really curving my way towards more gut health stuff. And in clinic, I really was attracting a lot of gut health stuff. So when you go down this little rabbit hole, you realize how much you don't know, and research is always changing that too. And I think it's really important to get the right research and all the rest, because it's constantly changing as well. And I think it's nice for someone who understands the journey, because they've been through it themselves. Because gut health, as you can probably appreciate, is a huge topic. It's so important for our gut microbiome, our energy, our immunity, and having experienced it myself, when I went through my own journey with having parasites and food intolerances and that, you feel tired, you don't necessarily sleep very well. You wake up, and you can be bloated and you haven't even eaten yet. And you're like, what the hell's going on? And this is when I was a naturopath, by the way, like quite a few
Oh,
years in, and I'm like, something's
oh
not
my
right,
God.
Yeah, I knew something wasn't right, and that was when, I sent away for a stool test, and I was like, oh God, literally, excuse me. But when I got the results back, I was like, no, because I've been treating people with this sort of stuff for years, and then I got to be my own guinea pig. So that very much got me even to be more specialized with all this stuff. And I think really firsthand experience what people go through, which, was huge for me, because I can really empathize with my clients and, help them one-on-one or through my program, which I've developed online. And, I had to come up with my own recipes. I had to come up with my own protocols and stuff on how you deal with all this stuff, because, normal stuff wasn't working for me. So it's a matter of just sort of combining it all and working it out, which, when you get to be your own guinea pig, you get pretty good at it.
All
Yeah.
right, all right. So let's just we have a lot of questions for you. So let's just start with the gut health test. What are the tests that you recommend so that let's say if I'm feeling a little bloated, I'm feeling a little flatulence, all kind of things are happening up, and that's correlated with my mental health at the same time. I'm thinking I'm feeling a little anxious.
Totally.
Well, right? What test do you recommend?
So a really comprehensive digestive stool analysis, short for CDSA. It's
Mm-hmm.
available pretty much most places around the world. So the US and Canada, you can order them online too. Australia and New Zealand are very common as well. So comprehensive digestive stool analysis, it picks up on your formation of your stool, the color of the poo, because all these things can indicate different things. It looks for like all your macronutrients, so that's your starches, your carbohydrates, your proteins, your fats. Are you malabsorbing those? Is there any in your stool? Because there shouldn't be. And if there's an issue, say for example with your pancreas or something like that, that test will pick that up. And also there's different levels of it, so you can look for inflammation, tumor markers, something called short chain fatty acids, which are important for our gut as well. And then it also looks for our beneficial bugs. So they're what we call our probiotics, our beneficial bacteria. You get your poo cultured, they look at, well, what's normal and where are you at? Because sometimes, people have really, really low levels of these for various reasons. And then it will also look for things like if you've got a yeast overgrowth, which is really common if someone's getting bloated and gassy and windy, parasite infections like what I had, and then bacterial overgrowths as well. So that's sort of a basic one. The cost in Australia for a real basic one's about $130. It's not covered under Medicare at all. Yeah, that's just the heads up with, I think, with where you sort of go first. If someone's reacting to FODMAP foods, so these are foods high in something called FODMAPs. They're just foods that you ferment in your small intestine. If you've got an overgrowth called SIBO, so that's an overgrowth in our small intestine. If someone's reacting to foods high in FODMAP, so that's things like onions, garlic, honey, asparagus, broccoli in large amounts. If you're reacting to all those foods, then it's possible you have some type of sensitivity to those foods, or you've got some type of overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine. And that's where doing a breath test using 2 different sugars is really helpful to diagnose that, because that's a very specific treatment again. A stool test can't pick that up. A stool test can never pick up what's happening in our small intestine. That picks up what's happening in the large intestine. That's the hose further down the tract before exit, so to speak. Small intestines, the hose, it's about 6 meters long. It connects our stomach to there and then to our large intestine. So if someone's reacting to FODMAP foods, then I would suggest they need to get a breath test done to specifically look for that, because that's quite a specific treatment. Some people sometimes have all of it going on when I get their test results back, and I'm like, oh, you're thing. And their diet's got to be a little bit limited initially, because you've got to take away the foods that these things thrive on and then bring them back through again when we do the food introduction plan as well.
Okay. So, all right. So there are 2 types of tests that you were recommending. One is for the small intestine, and that's typically a breath test, right? If someone is allergic to FODMAP foods, and that's what you would get done, a breath test. And the second is for the large intestine. That's a stool test, and that will tell, tell an expert as to what is wrong with my gut and what are the issues. So you can at least, we can start the remedial process after that, the remediation. So let's talk all right, so let's just talk about stomach acid, so
hours. We don't have hours, that's all right.
all of us have stomach acid. Is it too high or too low? What should we have? What is the optimal level of stomach acid we should have?
Yeah, so you don't want too high or too low, do we? We want stomach acid. It's a protective thing from our body. So they say when we're actually digesting food, our stomach pH is actually 1.5.
Wow.
So on a neutral, like a pH scale, you've got up to 14. So anything from 7 to 14 is your neutral to alkaline. And then anything from 0 to 7 is acidic. And the further down it goes to the 0 is more acidic. So stomach acid being 1.5 means it's very strongly acidic.
Yeah, acidic.
So that's our first line of defense. Stuff comes in through our mouth, our food, we've got to liquefy that. It happens in our stomach. And then if any microbes or whatever come in through your mouth too, you want to be able to neutralize them ideally in your stomach acid. That's our first line of defense. So we want stomach acid. The issue is, for about 5% of people, it's too high. And you can actually see that in the iris sometimes. People get like this bright white ring right around their pupil when I look in their iris and I do the iridology part. And then you can get low stomach acid, so that's not good. That's probably about 95% of the population. And as we age, our stomach acid does actually decrease over time. It's just what happens. As we age, lots of things slow down. Let's age well. So stomach acid decreasing means it becomes a little bit too more alkaline. So you can end up, say, with feeling like you've got a brick in your stomach, a bit of indigestion. Sometimes, we can get reflux from that because the food's sitting there. It's not able to really, break it down properly, like it should be, and liquefy its contents to send it lower down. So if it's sitting there for too long, starts fermenting a bit, it starts coming back up again. So most of the time when someone has reflux, we actually need to look at supporting their stomach acid with things like bitter herbs are really good. Bitter herbs are things like gentian, dandelion root tea. There's lots of different bitter herbs. They're bitter, they do not taste good. Ideally, we do it through liquid. You know, you want your tongue receptors, your bitter receptors on your tongue to be able to taste the bitterness, which is gross. If you've ever taken Swedish bitters or something, we're not taking it for the taste, we're doing it for the therapeutic amount. Another way is something like, you know, lemon juice and hot water, or apple cider vinegar and hot water before we eat. And that naturally gets your stomach acid going as well, if you've got low stomach acid. If you've got high stomach acid, the opposite. You don't want to be doing that before meals.
Okay, so apple cider vinegar will help with the stomach acid, right? And then, so let's talk a little bit about the constipation and diarrhea. So the foods that are good for constipation and diarrhea, and generally
Yep.
the foods that are good for your gut, right?
Yep. So, and it varies. It depends on someone's test results too. So, you know, it's not a one size fits all sort of thing. So I had a really good think about, well, what foods are good for everyone as well. So, I mean, constipation, I would say number one, fluids. You know, there's three big things we look at with constipation. Are you drinking enough water or herbal tea, or, you know, some sort of fluid? It's got to be something. If you don't like drinking water, then, you know, you can infuse it with herbs or something. Two, the exercise, so body movement, making sure you are moving. You know, that movement when we exercise is so important for bowel motions as well. And the third major thing is dietary fiber. So looking at, you know, are you actually having enough fiber in your diet? There's different types of fiber. So, you know, the general recommendation for supporting our gut health is 35 grams of fiber a day. So that's a really good amount. So what that fiber does is it's helping to keep your gut moving. And depending on the type of fiber, it can actually be very good for constipation and diarrhea type. So constipation usually is any more than 2 every 2 days or more. If you're not moving your bowels, like some people get up to a month of not moving their bowels, you know, it's horrible. And, you know, you don't wish that upon anyone, because you just feel really heavy and you don't function very well. You're going to be reabsorbing all that stuff in your bowel. So fiber, you know, if you are constipated, you'd be looking at your types of fiber that are basically, they draw water to them. So things like, you know, your slippery elm does that. It forms like a gel when you add water to it. And things like chia seeds or flax seeds, they do a similar thing. So when we add water to chia seeds, they go jelly-like, and the longer you leave them like that, they go really jelly-like. So they absorb up to about 10 times their weight in water. So, you know, if you're adding chia seeds and then you're only adding, say, so 1 teaspoon of chia seeds, 1 teaspoon of water, you may actually end up getting constipated if you're doing that and not drinking enough fluids, because they go hard and then they absorb 10 times their weight in water. So that's not uncommon for me to see that in practice. You know, chia seeds are great for constipation, but make sure you're drinking enough water, or that you're actually, you know, soaking them with enough milk or water or whatever you're doing it with. Those types of fibers, so the soluble fiber, the types that absorb the water, they help to basically make your poos nice and soft and easy for you to move. So that's really good for constipation type issues. It can also be good for diarrhea if it's lacking sort of that bulk, you could say, with, you know, someone being able to actually move their bowels. And then you've got the other type of fiber, dietary fiber as well, from your vegetables, and that's your insoluble type. That's the type that doesn't dissolve water. So, you know, like if you ever use celery or vegetables, it's that fibrous sort of bit that you have, and what that does is it provides bulk to our bowel motions, so we end up with a faster transit time. So if you want to increase your transit time, that can be a really good thing to do, to make sure we're having enough vegetable fibers to actually encourage through your gut motility as well.
So someone is asking a question. Their bowel movements are slower and harder. They have some issues with their spinal cord. So is there any home remedy for bowel movements that are slow and hard?
Slow and hard. So I would look at how many vegetables you're eating a day. So
yeah,
aim, and legumes as well. So aim for, say, at least 2 cups of vegetables lunch, 2 cups with dinner as well. If they're harder, I'd be looking at, are you drinking enough fluids? So fluids, if they are harder, make sure you're drinking, I would say on the upper limit, maybe 2 litres. If you're exercising, intense exercise where you're sweating a lot, make sure you're drinking at least 1 litre every hour that you're doing it that too, because you'll be sweating it out. The longer your poo sits in your large intestine, the harder they get. So if you've got really hard stools, it's a sign that they've just been sitting in the large intestine a little bit too long. The large intestine's reabsorbing that water back into your body, and then you end up with little hard poos, pebble poos. It can also be a sign of parasitic infections and other stuff going on. But, that's where doing something like that comprehensive stool test is really good, just to make sure, there's nothing else going on, because there is, you've got to address it. You won't feel
Absolutely.
well in your life.
Sure, sure. All right. So I think, comprehensive stool test, as Helena said earlier, that I think that's very important if someone's having stool issues or bowel movement issues. All right. So any recipe? I know you love sharing recipes, right? So share some recipe that you absolutely love for that's, that loves the gut, of course.
Yeah. So a good sort of across the board one is something like milk kefir. Have you heard of milk kefir before?
Milk kefir? Yeah.
Milk kefir. So it's a fermented milk drink.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. You can buy it in supermarkets now, which is really good. If you're really keen, you can actually make it yourself at home, which is what we do as well. So milk kefir, if you're lactose intolerant, just be aware milk kefir is generally very low in lactose, because the lactose is actually being broken down by the fermentation process. Mm-hmm. So most people with lactose intolerance can actually tolerate a very small amount of milk kefir. Those with an overgrowth in their small intestine, they can also tolerate a little bit. So what milk kefir does, it's what we call a probiotic food. It helps to inoculate the gut with the beneficial bugs. So, if you want to make it yourself at home, you basically just need something called milk kefir grains. You can order them online. You don't need very much. And if you're using, say, normal cow's milk, all you do is you use a glass jar, you put the milk kefir grains in, you pour the milk over the top, you cover it with a tea towel, and then you put it aside for 2 days.
That's milk kefir? Wow.
Yeah, it's really easy. It's not complicated at all. You can ferment it. The longer you ferment it, the more of the sour sort of taste it gets. So if you don't want that really sour taste, I would say maybe ferment it for maybe like 1 day instead. And then you don't get that really strong pungent taste as well. But I mean, if someone's never tried milk kefir before, they might want to buy, a bottle first to make sure they like it first. And then, you can buy the grains online. They're about $10 or something. And then they keep on repopulating, which is awesome. So once you have them, they just keep on making the milk kefir for you. When you don't want to use them, you store them in the fridge. You just pour a little bit of milk over them, and get them out when you're ready to use them again.
All right. So milk kefir is something that Helena recommends, that you can either buy it from the supermarkets or you can make it, at home. That's pretty easy for all of us to do that. Anything else? Any other last thoughts? The closing remarks, I should say that. What is the tip that you like to tell the users about, gut health, the maintenance of their gut health? What should they do?
Well, just something else I thought of is looking at doing some sort of really good fiber at breakfast to really set your body up.
Yeah.
So I'm into doing some sort of like porridge. Oats are fantastic as a porridge. They're what we call a probiotic food. So they can be generally tolerated regardless if someone's got overgrowths, infections, and all the rest. If someone's celiac, where they've got an autoimmune response to gluten, they just need to make sure they source one that's not contaminated with gluten. So, start off your day with a really good source of fiber, so something like oats or buckwheat or something. If you're having digestive issues, soak them overnight, the night before. You can be really prepared, and that soaking process actually helps your digestion work better. It takes the load off your digestion. It's actually activating the nutrients in them. And then you're getting a really good source of fiber first thing in the morning. And then you can top it off and put a little bit of milk kefir in there if you'd like to. So then you're getting your what we call prebiotic foods that help to feed your gut bacteria. And then you've actually got your probiotic foods that help to, be your beneficial bugs to inoculate your gut as well. So it's not, what we do one day that really helps. It's what we do ongoing, you know, and you can have cheat days every now and again, you know, you're human. So
Yeah.
I, you know, it's what we do most of the time. So focus on, you know, looking after yourself, looking after your gut long term, and just doing things like changing it up. You know, our gut loves different foods. So keep, you know, your diet diverse. Aim for different colors in your veggies and aim for different fibers and that. You know, don't eat the same foods day in, day out because you'll get bored. You can build up intolerances to these things and that as well. And I just think it's good for your mental health as well to vary it up a little bit as well.
All
Yeah.
right. Okay. To summarize, so Helena is suggesting, fiber includes plenty of fiber in your food, whether it's soluble fiber or insoluble fibers. Start the day with fiber in the morning with kefir. Kefir is very good for your stomach. It's already probiotic, so it goes there. All the bacteria, good bacteria, goes in your stomach, right, and helps your gut health. And if your gut health is good, then your mind is also going to be good. So we all know that, right? We've talked about so many times the gut and the gut and the brain connection. There's a nerve going out there. All right, so I'd like to finish this session now. These are short sessions, and if someone has any more questions, you're welcome to DM us. And I know people are joining now. I'm sorry. We are finishing this session right now. This session has been on gut health. And Helena's shared some recipes and she shared some tips as to what you should do. So replay this and watch it, whenever you can. With that, I'd like to wrap up this session. Thank you so much, Helena, for your
Bye,
tips.
everyone. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Bye-bye. And bye, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.